We have a quorum. 5, 6, thank you. And we're called to order. And next item is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments that they would like to make to the agenda? And I'll start. I'd like to add the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers membership discussion to the agenda, and we can put that under new business. And then the Lake Education Committee is listed as Meredith, but that'll be Meredith. maybe Scott, we'll see. And then the Treasurer's Report, I'll give that tonight. And the Lake Quality Committee, that will be Meredith. And Meredith.
May I make one more adjustment? Can we add summer cleanup / Manitou days under the Lake Education Committee?
Lake Education. Summer cleanup / Manitou days. Any others? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda as adjusted?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as adjusted.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Approval of the previous board meeting minutes. That would be the February 20th board meeting minutes. Does anybody have any adjustments to those minutes? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve last month's minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Public comments. At each of our meetings, we reserve 15 minutes for folks to come in and talk about items that are not on the agenda. Would anybody like to take advantage of that time? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to new business, committee appointments. So this is the meeting where we make committee appointments, so I'll make those. I think I have this right. Education Committee, Scott Costello will be the chair, and Meredith and Susie will be, Meredith Wahlberg and Susie Mahoney will be on that committee. The Lake Utilization Committee, Chris Churchill will be the chair, and Mark Gans will be the vice chair, and Darren DeYoung, Luke Machad, Scott Bonin, and Alexander Schwartz will be on that committee. And then the Lake Quality Committee, Mike Pronto will be the chair, and then Diane Longville and Mark Wisniewski. Did I get that right, Mark? Wisniewski, sorry. Will be on that committee. And thank you, everybody, for volunteering to be on a committee. I appreciate that.
I think Mark was going to be the chair, and I was going to be the vice.
Okay, is that how you guys want to do it? I'm fine either way.
That's acceptable.
That's acceptable.
All right. So Chris is going to be the vice chair?
Yep.
And Mark will be the chair. All right, thanks for clarifying that.
We're polished.
Okay.
I'm not.
And the next item is the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers membership. And this is something that we have done historically. And Sherry put a few pages of information at your area. And it's $100 a year for membership. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the membership into the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. And we're on to old or unfinished business. The first item is the board activity annual calendar, which we've reviewed at a few meetings now. couple, and we've made some adjustments, and now we have it in a final form. And I'll make a motion to approve this annual activity calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this?
My only thing is thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sherry. Nicely done. Okay, anything else? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that passes. Let's see. VFW EAW update. We're still waiting on a report from one of the state agencies. And I think Sherry sent it out to everybody after the last meeting. And so if folks have input on that, if you could provide it, say within a couple of weeks, can we just set that deadline of, I don't know, sometime in April?
I'm going to say April 12th.
Okay, April 12th. Chris?
I had one question on that. For the CO2 thing and calculating it, would we calculate that just like emissions for like a car for a house? Like if we were to do a calculator on X number of boats extra, or should we just take a crack at it that way and figure out what that metric? I don't know how people are going to come up with that, because they have all these online calculators for your houses and emissions and all this other stuff. Do we just take a, like, try to help them figure it out with the number of increase? Like, here, take the current boats. Let's say they're running every day for 12 weeks out of the year or whatever it is, and do that delta, or how, what's the suggestion from others on that? Because I don't know how people come up with. I haven't found anything online how to measure that for a marina or boats.
Yeah, and are they, I suppose that part of it is they're talking about the exhaust from boats, but is it also the manufacture of the docks and, you know, and things like that? Yeah, it's a good question. And I can make a call and get some information on that.
Yeah, because it's easier for like some of these businesses and what they're giving off. You know, they have their little calculators for it, but I was struggling to figure out how the heck to do it for a marina.
It is a little bit unique,
Yeah.
I think. Okay, so so we set that date, April 12th, for comments to Sherry. And then once we get that report, then we'll have to finish up the EAW and get that submitted for public comment. Next item is the low water level study group. Chris?
All right, I'll try to do cliff notes because I was kind of winded in our last meeting. So we were going back and forth on emails on some of the suggestions on how we're going to try to address low water, at least for Commercial Bay to begin with. It got into figuring out also for residents in multi-use docks. We had a little discussion on that. Scott had provided some pretty good guidance on initially, if we hit this level, this is how long docks can go out. If you hit this level, you can go out. You know, so it was like an X to Y what you could do. Made sense. So what we wanted to do is map that stuff to what's actually happening out there with depths. So we went, Mike and Prano and I went out to Commercial Bay and measured all these depths, and we'll share some materials with you. We didn't get them printed off for you, but I'll share it with you so you guys can review, because we're not voting on anything tonight, but I would want your guys' input so we can get some guidance for the next meeting, because I'm sure we'll get some variances then that we'll have to vote on. But the depths that we measured, where we wanted to get people at least, we thought 2 feet of water was a fair depth to moor a boat, so float it. When we measured that got us to the shallower side of docks of White Bear, about 50 feet out from the ordinary high water mark. So meaning, if you wanted to get 2 feet of water to start your docks, you'd have to push out 50 feet past your ADUA that we have today, so past 300 feet. And that was consistent throughout the bay there until you got to about Whitaker Street, where you gain a little depth, and then things, you know, instead of 50 feet, you probably needed 30 feet. So in parallel, when we were doing all this and gathering the data, we did ask the marinas to come up with suggestions of what would they need for this year, without telling them we were doing any of these depths or anything else. And they came back. Docks of White Bear needed 3 of their docks out 50 feet, and they're staying within their ADUA, and they're not crossing Lions Park because they didn't want to deal with that headache. But they have some diagrams, and we'll give them to you for review, and you can see that where they tried to keep the integrity of what they had approved, but only push out 3 of their 5 docks out to 50 feet. And then Tallies, they only wanted 30. So it matched up with what Scott had. It fit, if you looked at Scott's ranges, it fit into some of those ranges, but what we felt was there's a depth that we started having problems. And we saw in all the history, you can go on the DNR site and you can see the ups and downs of the water depths, and we'll share that with you too. But 922.5 was in August of last year, where a lot of people were taking their boats off the lake last year, and a lot of headaches were there, where we kind of felt that's the range that we feel issues are going to happen, right? So our suggestion was, if there's something within that mark, we would take a variance in. We would look at some of these parameters or guidance that we build for ourselves to say, okay, we only want to get these people out to a minimum depth. We don't want anything automatically kicking in for them. We want to work with them and, get them what they need, but not make it exuberant and make it crazy where it causes hardships for their neighbors or other marina owners if it is a marina owner. The same thing we wanted to apply for residents too, but for residents is a little different because they have different configurations, whether it's boats, lifts, etc. But the only time a resident would need a variance if it goes outside of any of our ordinances. So if they go past the rule of our length of dock, we would say residents apply for a variance, and we'd work with them in the same way. But 2 feet's probably not the number, because you probably need, in some instances, 3 to 4 feet for a boat, like a wakeboard boat on a lift. But we want to figure out what that minimum depth is, so like docks aren't going out, in a crazy length. If we just say go ahead and do it, we want to have some control and some guidance there from the LUC on some of these variances. So we want to limit that. And then when it comes to multi-use docks, for the ones that are permitted, if they need a change, we're going to have them come in with a variance every time, because it would be a change to their configuration. We want to notify the neighbors, and that's the big thing, is we want the neighbors and the people who are multi-use docks on the same page of any of these configuration changes. That is a very, very high level synopsis, but I think we have some good data that backs up what everybody on the committee was thinking, and we tried to target the areas that we knew were problematic, and we know there's problems at this 922.5 mark. We know we have issues. If you just look at the historical data, and if you go on that DNR site, you can see where we've lost over 3 feet of water since our high mark in 2020. I think it was 2019, 2020. So it's that kind of helped guide us to figuring out what we should allow on some of these instances. And then the good thing on top of it, what the marina owners, only docks of White Bear and Tallies, really wanted to change. The city didn't know what they wanted until they get their docks in, and VFW doesn't know either yet. They both got back to me. But the ones that did request it matched back to what we really measured. So the data kind of backs up, and it's not outrageous what they're asking, because it kind of fits into what we saw out there in reality.
So are you going to prepare like a summary document with some information, and then Sherry's going to send that to all the board members?
I think and here's what I would like out of that. We'd send it to all the boards, because I think what we'd come into next is, for the variances that I'm sure that are going to come, we'll vote on those next. I would want some feedback and guidance, or things that you're thinking, where if we can shape those things even in the variance or guidance for the LUC to have, that will help us when we're trying to approve some of these things. So I'll sum that all up and share it with you guys. But I would want the board's feedback on it, because the committee, we're pretty much on the same page on everything. But it was a lot of email. So the first discussion really was at the LUC for the folks that were on it or part of the LUC, and people. We had some good discussion with Luke and Mark, and I would want your guys' feedback on top of it to kind of wrap it up. So if we start starting to review stuff in our next meeting, we try to use some of your guys' feedback towards those variances.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Chris right now?
Yeah, I do. The water historically has gone up until the 4th of July, and then it plummets and goes down.
Yeah.
So you can expect then that you're going to get a whole flood of variance requests after the 4th of July, early August, where people are going to want to put their docks out further because the water's going down.
Yeah.
And that's just historically how it works. But it's going to start out at a low level to begin with.
Yep, it goes up about 6 to 12 inches in the spring if we get rain.
If we
right?
get rain,
and
and we
see,
haven't
if
in the
you
last
go,
2 years.
If you look at that one that we have, the past 3 years, it's been like that. And then this year, it's been weird. It's like it's dropped tremendously.
It did last year, too.
Yep, and we're bottoming out, right? And we're not gaining anything, which is weird because like sometimes you gain a little bit in the fall too, but we're not. There's no tick, right? So that's where we probably don't want to wait till July on some of this stuff where we know the mark where things get problematic and it's like 922.5. That's where we're starting to see things on the lake where people are having problems in August and not towards the end of the year where it dips, right?
Yeah. But I think you're going to be flooded with a lot of variance requests around 1st of August.
Yeah, well, we can look at the information and then we can.
Yeah, and
maybe a
here's
more
what we're
informed
trying to
discussion.
address right now. We're trying to be proactive on, at least with the commercial bay, because like if we can get them dialed in where we have a high and low water mark for them, then we kind of have 2 permits, or we have a process that we can work with them on. Residents in multi-use docks, I think we have some work there to figure out with all the different use cases that are there, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're gonna have like a gonculator to figure out every one of them with turns in lakes, different types of boats, some of that other stuff. So if folks already know they have problems, we want to provide a way they can go after it right now. Where I think you're right, in August we're going to get a slew of them.
Well, in along South Shore Boulevard,
Yep,
you're going to have people in early July or late June
96.
that are
I think you're gonna see a lot
are
of-
having at least 350-foot docks
Yeah,
because that water's low to begin with.
correct, 100%.
So you're expecting all of those residents to come to you with a variance request?
If it goes over the or if it's over the ordinance, yes, we want to do that.
I mean, currently, our ordinances allow for a residential dock, not multi-use or anything. It has to be within the ADUA,
Yeah.
but the ADUA is defined as being 200 feet out, but it can go up to 300 feet to reach water that's 4 feet deep.
Okay.
So, in that kind of case, we would expect that, okay, you can get them out to 300 feet if the water's really low. But you better talk to your neighbors so we don't have a whole bunch of conflicts because the shoreline isn't perfectly straight.
And I think if you bring up a good point. If it becomes too much work, I think it could be. But I think if we don't put the work in some of these cases where it's going to get disruptive, where if people just start putting out their docks, even if they're under 300 feet, if they don't work together, you're going to have a lot of fights on the lake beyond that, right? Especially in these turns and nooks that there's multiple docks there.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in terms of one concern I have is, I mean, Sherry's already getting questions.
Yeah, and so
by
I
phone
talked to
call?
her about that. We should summarize and try to give guidance, but the summary I gave her, if there's people that have questions on it, we'll give her enough content that she can try to answer, and if she can't answer it, she should give them to the LUC. The LUC should be able to take it and run with it from there.
And, you know, because the ice went out so early this year, people are getting ready to put up their docks out now.
Yep.
So, and I don't know about Commercial Bay when they normally put their docks out, but we're going to have to move kind of fast.
Yep. So on that, for Commercial Bay, I talked to Keith and Mike McGoldrick. Mike's chomping the bit because they just want to figure out if their format will work for some of their users. Keith was kind of like, we got another month of winter, right? So I think our April meeting will work fine if we follow the process and we get the variances and make sure the neighbors know.
Yeah.
I think that's the guidance we give and try to
Yeah.
vote on it in April for
I
them.
mean, so often here, you know, stuff goes from month to month
Yep.
to month, and we got to make sure that April.
I think April's our date. I think April's our meeting. If we could do it sooner, we would. But I think the next meetings are one that we try to clean up Commercial Bay at least. And if there's other variances come in, we address them too.
So
Here's what I have to say about it. We go with our ordinances. It's 200 feet until 4 feet, whichever is less, up to 300 feet. So once you get to 4 feet, you can't go to 300. And then after that, then you need a variance, and that's for private user docks. Anybody else who's licensed has to have a variance to go beyond their license.
Okay, so we'll see something that comes out here shortly, I guess.
Yep, and then just provide your feedback. I think that would be very helpful, especially if we're coming into some of these decisions next month.
And if you have feedback, send it to Sherry. Don't send it to the whole group, because we don't want to make it look like we're making decisions.
Absolutely, yeah, good point.
Everybody on the email.
Yeah, one other.
Mark?
So for thinking about if in April we are below 922, I think we've got a half inch to spare right now. People will come asking for a variance to change things, and will it be to accommodate 921 and a half or 921? Do we want to think about kind of what level should the commercial operators try to plan ahead to operate at?
What I'd like to give them is if these numbers match up for what we're seeing, which we see they are, like the starting point from the ordinary high water mark, like what is that what is that length of pushing out to get you 2 feet of depth? That's your starting point, right? Because that's their problem area.
As of April.
Well, and this
Or
is
do you
where
want to think ahead to?
Here's what I want to do. I don't want to pick a date. I'd rather say here 922 and a half is our guidance to say there's problems. Like I think 922 is a number that doesn't reflect. It's too low. It's 6 inches too low, right, in my head. And it's too low compared to what we see with the real data once you start measuring depths in some of these spots, where I think it should be like 922 and a half right now where we're at, or that should be the number because we know we're already having problems at that point.
I agree with that because
If that makes sense, and I don't know, I kind of rambled on.
when you put out a dock in the spring, every year, it's at least a foot lower by August, probably more. So you know if we're at 922, we're going to be, unless we get crazy weather, we're going to be 921 by August.
Yeah, that's the question is,
Yeah.
should we be consistent to all of them and say, plan ahead for what you need when it's 921? Or they'll assert, what they want to do, and I think we should have a common response to all of the.
Well, and I think the common response is if you're going to change anything on your dock format, you have to come in for a variance every time on it. Now, what we want to do is give you a low water like have a different kind of a process here. We know at 922 and a half there's a problem, and we should get going on it. So if we have that in March, it's like you should think about it right now. Where some of them know they're going to have problems, but they're not acting on it, right? Like, I think the city may have a little bit of a problem, but they're not there yet until they put their docks in there. They can't see it.
I think
Can I ask, how much do we charge for submitting a request for variance?
$60.
Yeah, now, I mean, I have a lot of, I'm treasurer of my local dock association, and that would just sort of be a little bit of salt in the wound.
So we brought this up in the discussion of the LUC. We said if we have this like low water kind of cut off or area of where, hey, we know there's problems, and you're applying for a variance due to this hardship of low water, we'd say we'd waive it. And say,
Okay, so variance for hardship.
hardship would be different than just a variance to change your dock to whatever
Okay.
you want.
For low water.
Yeah.
And I just want to bring up also, Meredith had a great idea that we should probably publicize this and put our ordinances and our rules out. So the people who live on the lake, who have association docks on the lake. Oh, it was Sherry's? Sorry, whoever, somebody had a great idea. And I think it's a great idea. And I think we need to publicize it a little more than just people who are watching this meeting. That's all I'm saying, because it's going to happen.
Well, and you probably want to publish it in more than one place. Do it in the White Bear Press and do it in the Laker.
Yeah.
You know, have it in a couple different places. But I think Mark's point is well taken that, you know, we don't want to start at 922.6, knowing that it's going to go down, you know, probably a foot at least by August, that maybe you want to start out further.
Oh, like a higher depth.
Yeah.
I'm open to this discussion.
I mean-
Now, my 922.5 was just based off the DNR data and looking at last year's problematic area. That was my first stab at it, and it seemed like when August was a bad month, and if you looked at it, it was about 922.5. I'm open to upping it. I'm open to upping that. I think it's just we don't want to up it too far where now you're opening it up where you're getting all these low water variances where do they even, you know, in these cases, do they have the depth, but they're just looking for a longer dock for whatever benefit? And I don't think you're going to see many of those. I
I don't
you'd
think
only,
people are going to do that.
I agree. I hope not.
Nobody wants to put out a 300-foot dock.
I don't
It's a
think they
lot of
want.
work.
I don't think they want to pay for it. I do in Commercial Bay. I could see where people want longer docks, maybe,
Yeah, there they.
possibly. Residential, no. I don't
No.
think anybody's going to do that.
But right now, the ordinary high water mark in Birchwood, which has the deepest depth in the lake, my ordinary high water is 5 feet out of the water, 4 feet at least.
I missed your I missed
My
your,
ordinary high water marker in the ground.
yes, you're down
is-
4 or 5 feet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Yep, absolutely.
But what I'm saying is people who don't have that kind of water are going to have to be pushing it way far out.
They're in trouble. I'm in trouble.
In
too,
trouble to
where
begin with.
I'm at. Yep.
Okay, so you're going to put something together, and Sherry's going to send it out? And
Absolutely.
everybody's going to offer input.
And please provide your input. We'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Do
Oh,
we need a motion to say that we're not charging variance fees?
I think we do that at the time we get the variances.
and I think that we have to make that decision on a variance by variance basis.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to be careful because remember, variances by definition have to allege a hardship anyway.
Yeah.
So if it's for a very specific hardship, then that needs to be articulated.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Okay, moving on. 2024 White Bear Lake Use Study. So the contract's been signed. It's been forwarded to Blue Water Science, and Meredith and Mark and their group will be kind of overseeing that relationship. And so this will be a monthly item on the agenda for Meredith. Okay, we're into reports and action items. Executive Committee didn't meet this month, so no report. Lake Quality Committee, Meredith.
All right. The ISAT was declared on March 8th. Our current lake level is 922.04. That is a foot and 4 inches lower than right around the ice out last year, which was mid-April. So it's not a direct comparison, but the same number of days after ice out last year as we are this year, we're about a foot 4 inches lower.
Any questions for Meredith? Okay, thank you, Meredith. Lake Utilization Committee, Mark?
So, Chairman of the Board, what I'd like to do is, there was no complaints about any of these. So if I could I just slate them all together, Council?
Would you just handle them individually?
I can handle them individually.
Thank you for that.
Manitou Island Association swim water structures. They have buoys. They don't have swim ropes, just the buoys. LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Next one, McCartney Estates. It was approved at the LUC, and I so move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers. It says $60 per registered watercraft, and we're coming up with a total of $240, and there's 6 of them.
There's a late fee with that as well,
And there's a late fee too.
and an application fee, so that's 120, and then 2 boats is 120, so that's 240.
I thought they were coming up with 6.
Four you don't pay
Or
for.
free.
You don't pay for the first 4.
All right.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Next one, White Bear Lake Fireworks. LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? I'll start. Do we want to waive the fee on that?
Yes, please.
Please.
Make a motion. I will move to amend my motion to approve it with canceling the fee.
Waiving the fee and second, are you okay with that?
I'm second.
Okay.
I thought you were going to bring up like.
Okay, so any discussion, further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Next is White Bear Yacht sailing schedule. LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Next is Black Bear Yacht Association schedule. And before I motion, I just want to say I really appreciate how these 2 yacht clubs work together so they can have their regattas and don't intervene with each other. So LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
The last is the 2004 White Bear Lake permit terminology sheet that was sent out.
Is there anything you want to say about that, Mark?
No, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there was a lot
I think
of.
we cleaned up a few things
Yeah.
last time. We've discussed it 3 or 4 times, and I think the last round we've cleaned up the last set, and I think it's pretty solid. So we're hoping it goes along with the permits, and people can just, it helps them as a cheat sheet.
We need a motion to approve these, if there have been
Well,
changes
you might
made.
as well. A lot of-
Approved, and I so move.
There's a recommendation to do it anyway, so.
Second.
Second, to approve the updates to the permit terminology. Any discussion?
Yes.
I'm
Meredith?
sorry. I just started thinking about this today. Occasionally, lifts aren't attached to docks in low water situations where the lift will be further out into the lake. Could we just switch that language maybe just a little bit?
I think we had that off at
Yeah,
one point.
that's under lift?
Attached to the dock.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lift is a device to lift boats out of
Or,
water.
Yep, no attached.
okay.
I remember we had that removed.
Yeah, I just didn't switch.
Okay.
So the suggestion is to remove attached to a dock.
Correct.
Okay. So then it reads, a lift is a device to facilitate lifting boats out of the water.
Correct.
Okay, and is that a change okay with the motion in the second?
I'll make a motion for the change.
I'll second.
Okay, we're still on the same motion.
Well, I will amend the motion
Okay.
to make the change to say that a lift is not attached to the dock.
With that text change, you're okay, second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so that passes. And any questions for Mark? Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Lake Education Committee, Scott.
Yeah, we had a brief working session today to discuss various things. We are going forward as we voted last time with publishing stuff in the Laker. So we have a publication schedule, and the first one is due for us May 2nd. And I think we have ideas to fill our 4 pages. There'll be something on buoys, and several, probably something on the water levels that we figured out by then. And we are progressing with that. Lake cleanup, we had a very successful lake cleanup on the 9th, Saturday, including a bunch of volunteers from this committee and their families, and I thank you all for that. The report we got back from the Boy Scouts who organized this is that they had a total of 150 volunteers, which is probably their best turnout ever. And they divided the lake shore up into 12 groups that were assigned, including the geocachers and like 6 Boy Scout troops, VFW Auxiliary, the WBLCD, and the Wildwood Lions Club all participated, and they got a total of 535 pounds, which is pretty good. We've typically gotten more when you're able to go out on the ice, but there was no ice this year. We're also discussing having a summer lake cleanup, and we're hoping to connect it to Manitou Days, and so we're talking about applying for an official event for Manitou Days on June 15th. It'll be a Saturday in the morning, and then we would get on their calendar so we get more publicity that way. To make the application, we do have to accept some liability and provide our liability insurance. So for that reason, I would like to make a motion that we apply for a Manitou Days event for Summer Lake cleanup.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Meredith?
I'll just add that there is no fee to have an official Manitou Days event. We're just asking for a motion because that we do have to provide our liability insurance.
Of which I've discussed with the League of Minnesota Cities, and they said that, yes, there'd be no charge for us to get that. So it would be stipulated on the fact of us getting one from them. So I'll be looking into that this week.
Okay, and are we at a point where we understand everything well enough that this is the path we want to take?
Yeah, I would say that we are at a point where we can fill out the application.
Okay.
I can't guarantee you'll be approved, but I have a good feeling we might be.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for the work on that. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Thank you, great idea.
Any further discussion?
Are we going to include boats to do this too? Motorboats or just non-motorized boats? Are we going to have any restrictions there?
Anyone will be welcome to join in a motorized boat and a non-motorized boat on the shoreline as long as they're not trespassing.
Yeah.
Okay.
After we vote, I can explain a little more about our early ideas about how to implement this, but I think we need to finish the motion first.
Any further discussion?
I think also, Scott, you might be talking to somebody who knows some diver groups that might.
I think our council knows the diving groups. We were thinking once we have this date locked down, we can invite them and see who can pull out the largest and most incredible item out of the lake. Would be a nice thing to do as part of it.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Yeah, just to finish that, there's a bunch of things we have to figure out because we're not going to do the kind of organization the Boy Scouts did. I mean, I have their email list from their email. We could ask them, but it would be land-based, and then whoever, and then canoes or boats or whatever to find any other. And divers, that would be great. I mean, that would be a showstopper. And we hadn't talked about yet having prizes but we'll see how things progress. I think that's about it. I guess social media.
Sure. So this month on our social media, I'm going to post a reminder about boating during cold water. I'm going to post a reminder that we don't have any buoys in the lake yet. I'm going to post the lake level, and then likely something from Blue Water Science from the report they presented in October. And if anyone else has anything they'd like me to post, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Scott or Meredith? Okay, on to the treasurer's report. That's me. So 2023 end of year financials. I'd like to move to approve the December 2023 treasury report and send to the cities. That's my motion. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? The one thing I'll add is the only change was the corrected amount for the year-to-date interest from Royal Credit Union that was incorrect on the original report. So that was the update that was made. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, and then I would like to move to approve debit, and just this moment. Okay, sorry.
4-4 to check 4938.
Yep. Just trying to get it right with the text I was given. I was given cheat notes.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, so I'd like to approve, move to approve debit card 2024-4 through 2024-6, U.S. Bank withdrawal and checks number 4933 through 4938.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. And board council report, Alan?
Thank you, Chair. Reached out to our conservation officer, and not much going on yet just because of the time of the year. Also reached out to Cervedka, if you remember, the new officer that's in charge of the patrol. And one of the things that we're going to have to do is actually add, believe it or not, our ordinance regarding speeding on the lake. So historically what they've been doing is handing out essentially warnings. And so if they're going to start using Ticket Writer to actually cite speeders, we need to actually add that. Much if you recall the addition of violating permits, we had to add that into Ticket Writer so that we could properly ticket. And so in anticipation of a busy season, that's what we've been talking about and planning for. So a little bit of extra work to do that, to be able to do that. It's also helpful, like if you catch someone, let's say someone's boating while intoxicated, for example, but what gets them pulled over is speeding. It's nice to be able to have that charge there to show what the probable cause was to pull someone over, because oftentimes you wouldn't catch them weaving like you would a car or something like that. So it's important to be able to back up why people are seen and stopped with an actual citation. So some of the excitement that I guess is going in that regard. And between Sherry and I talking about insurance over the last month, I did put a call in to Antonio, which is the League of Minnesota Cities rep that sort of oversees that sort of thing. Haven't made full contact, but what I'm going to end up with is a deck page, and whatever answers I can't get for myself, I will get before we actually have a Q&A with the board about whatever you're worried about in terms of our own insurance covering things like events that we participate in. And so I'll be able to tell you more once I see a deck page that tells what those specifics are. But we have the standard pack, as far as I know, from the league, which of course covers all of our equipment from any accident, damage, or otherwise downstairs, and also obviously protects the board from any actions that might get us sued on charge of permits and things of that nature. So those would be considered decisions that would be defended if someone wanted to challenge them in court. And so stay tuned next month for that. So I'd take any questions.
And the speeding, is that something you initiate, or does Sherry initiate that, or I can't recall how we did that.
I'll end up inputting that into the court system. And so it's just an addition of a local ordinance that then becomes sort of blessed, if you will, by the county. And then what happens is it becomes available to the people that actually access that system. And we call it ticket writer because that's just sort of where you access that. They can do that with state law and they can do that with DNR because all that stuff has been sort of whole cloth added to the system. So it's already statewide. And so we don't have that with respect to our ordinances because it's that local. So as we need them, we just add them to the system. And if you recall, we had no reason to go beyond essentially writing letters to folks when there were violations of permits, and people were respectful of them and they changed their behavior. And so last year was the first year we got serious about having to cite anyone using Ordinance 5, for example. And so that was not in the system. And so we took the time to actually get it in there so that the deputies would have that available to them in the menu when he or she pulls that down. It's there under White Bear Lake Conservation District, where before there was nothing. And there is no state guidance as far as speed limits go on places like White Bear Lake, and there's no DNR rule, but we have one. So we have to add that specifically to be able to charge with it.
And what's the timing for that, would you say, estimate?
What do you mean?
Like to start to finish to get that into the books or to get that process completed?
It's a form that gets filled out, and I imagine someone has it sit on their desk for a few days, so it's not a long process. Again, this is just myself and the new commander of Water Patrol making sure that we have everything ready to go, so when the boats hit the water, they have that as a tool.
Okay. Any other questions for Alan?
With a predetermined fine?
No, it's just charged as well, in this case, it'd be I think all of our ordinances are technically misdemeanors. And so they would just come into court that way. If it's treated like any other speed, they usually start at $50 plus surcharges. So when you see them, by the time it shows up as a payable, it's right around $125. Wow. I didn't say I was going to do that. I'm just saying that's.
Okay, thank you.
It could be up to, a misdemeanor is $1,000. So I don't think anyone's going to anticipate coming in, speeding in their boat, getting a $1,000 fine. But anyway. And we can certainly talk about that if those things add up. Sometimes it's nice to actually reflect the fact that they can set it as a petty misdemeanor, something that's payable, that they don't have to go to court for. But right now we don't have that flexibility, so we'll just see how often they use it. And if we need to modify things and give them the ability to write that way, it'll just show up on a payable list, because that's what the state maintains. So that's why you never have to go to court for a stop sign or a speeding ticket or something like that, because it's already on the list of things that there's just a statutory. If you plead no contest, you just pay a certain amount.
Okay, any additional questions for Alan? Okay, thank you, Alan.
All right, thanks.
Announcements? I don't have any announcements. Sherry, do you have anything?
Just a couple. I just want to say Meredith has had her board term re-up for 3 more years, so Delwood got back to us about that, so yay. Also, I forwarded to you an email from the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center that has a lot of opportunities for us, and I'd like to encourage you to go see their open house. They have it on, I can't remember, Wednesdays at the end of the month, once a month, from 3 to 4, so that might be something interesting to go see. Just check your email, or if you lost it, let me know and I'll send it back to you. Also, they have a Phragmites webinar, so if you just want to educate yourself on AIS, you might want to just look at those and do that. And then just our next meeting is Tuesday, April 16th.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.